It
You
ups the
get
stakes, doesn't it? I guess though, war. It's that thing of, I think for a lot of people, it was probably a good aphrodisiac, thinking I might die tomorrow, so
let's knock one out.
let's make out. I think the other thing as well is that like it somebody who's like
Benson just completely ruined that argument. War is so romantic. I might die tomorrow. Yeah, let's bang one out. That's my intro.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Jamie, Your Film Taste Sucks, as we have switched over because we now have the artwork. I'm sorry, Ben.
That.
I know, I'm sorry, Ben. I will, Jamie, you can send them the artwork. Today we are...
which one you chose, yeah.
We are arguing, I mean, they're all quite similar, aren't they? But today we are arguing what is the quintessential romance film, and also throwing in what is our favourite romance film. We'll be doing this for the other genres as well. Anyway, shall we begin? Jamie, what have you been watching this last week in preparation?
Okay, so I've watched a lot of things this week. I'm not going to talk about all of them because a lot of them will come up naturally in the main argument.
Organically.
I'll start with a film that I watched before I knew for definite what topic we were doing. I watched a little film on Netflix called Velvet Buzzsaw. Starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Rene Russo. It was all right. Took a little bit of getting into it. Didn't really get going until the second half. I'm not quite sure it knows what kind of film it wants to be, whether it's a horror film or an art film or what. None of the characters in it are very likable, and the lead girl cannot act for shit. I knew that when she was in Doctor Who, and I know it now that she's been the lead of a movie. She can't act, so hopefully we won't ever see her again. But yeah, the film was fine. I also finished From Dusk Till Dawn, the series, so you won't hear me talk about that anymore. Do recommend checking it out to anyone. It's only 3 seasons, 10 episodes in each season, and it is one of those shows where each season declines in quality. Yeah, the second one is only slightly worse than the first one, but the third one is quite a considerable drop in quality. I think they got their budget cut because all of a sudden the effects, which weren't great to begin with, are really bad. And one of the main actresses, Isa Gonzalez, she suddenly is only in like half the season, and she was the most compelling character in the show. Now, to be fair, that might be because I think that's around the time she went off to film Baby Driver. So that might be why she's only in half that season. But anyway, so I finished that. I've also watched season 2 of Staged on BBC iPlayer, if anyone's seen that, with Michael Sheen and David Tennant.
Seen bits.
I've heard it's very good.
It is. It's very good, and I'm really annoyed because I actually wanted to do something like that, and they beat us to it and did it better than we ever could. So I also watched. So then, in preparation for this, I watched Roman Holiday, which I'm sure will definitely come up at some point in the conversation. Very interesting black and white film with Audrey Hepburn in it. She won an Oscar for it. Gregory Peck in it. Couple of fun facts about that film. Gregory Peck was originally going to be given. He was going to be the only one with top billing with his name on the poster. And halfway through production, he convinced the studio to give Audrey Hepburn equal billing, which I believe was the first time that had ever happened in Hollywood, that a male star had convinced them to give a female star equal billing. Also a fun fact, the writer of that film was not allowed to take credit for writing the film or accept his Oscar because he was a suspected communist sympathizer. And it wasn't until many years later he was finally given the credit he deserved. And there is a film about him now called Trumbo, where Bryan Cranston plays him. It's a very good film.
Everything gets a film these days, doesn't it?
Yeah, man.
I don't know, someone related to a film could stub their toe and there'd be a 3-part documentary about it.
There are no new stories.
I watched the big.
There are too many stories, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I watched The Big Sick, which I won't talk that much about. I liked it. What If, which was fine. I think actually someone's right, whoever it was before who said Daniel Radcliffe can't act.
That was me. Yeah. Stand by it.
Also me.
Me.
I watched La La Land, which I still think was robbed when Moonlight took the Oscar. Fuck Moonlight. La La Land all day and all night, baby. Me Before You, I watched that. I don't know if anyone's heard of this one, where Emilia Clarke plays the carer looking after the dude who's quadriplegic.
Oh,
And I knew going in, it's one of those films where just looking at the DVD cover, I was like, I know how this is going to end. And like Steve Carell in The Office, I was like, I am prepared to be hurt again. And funnily enough, did cry my eyes out. Just a few short hours ago, I watched that one. And the last one I'm going to talk about before we go into the main debate. Fun fact, there's not that many films called Age of something, but in April 2015, two very different Age of films came out. Age of Ultron came out, which I didn't watch, and this one, which I did watch, The Age of Adeline, which I highly recommend to everyone. Wonderful film, the best performance Harrison Ford has ever done, because here's my first sweeping statement of the episode. Harrison Ford can't act. He's just the same bland, boring, gruff, manly man in every film. But he's really good in that. He's really emotional. Just quickly, it's about a woman who has a freak accident in the early 1900s that leaves her with the inability to age. So she is frozen at the age of 29 forever. And the film then chronicles why, at first you might think that's wonderful, you live forever. And the film is all about how that's terrible, because the government want to get hold of her because they're like, oh, we want to study you. There's a really brutal scene where she meets her daughter, and her daughter is now a 90-year-old woman. And Harrison Ford's character basically is the father of her current love interest, but she doesn't know that until she meets him and realizes that she dated him in the 60s.
awkward.
Yeah, and I have to admit, it's a heartbreaking film. My one problem with it is there's this bit right at the end, which I'm not going to spoil in case anyone does want to watch it, but there is a classic example of them telling, not showing. There's this image where if they just ended on the image, it would be a wonderfully ambiguous ending to the film. And instead, they had to slap a voiceover on it that's basically like, and then this happened. Remove the voiceover, and it's a perfect movie. And that's it. Because the other one I watched, I'm not going to talk about yet, because it's going to be my main argument. So I've cried a lot this week. Benton appears to be muted.
Sorry, I was eating.
That's all right. I can ask Dave. Dave, what have you been watching?
It's been a fairly busy week. Well, that's busy. I'm watching films and kind of busy, really. But I watched a kind of old sci-fi. So I watched The Incredible Shrinking Man, in which a man does battle with a spider and gets mauled by a house cat. It was pretty good. I watched Village of the Damned, which kind of sent me on a bit of they call it a wormhole when you get obsessed with something and then you burrow down.
Black hole, I think.
Is that a black hole? Anyway. So the kid who's in that is also in a film called The Innocents, which I used to watch all the time. So I kind of got into an Innocents wormhole, black hole anyway with that. Then I watched Escape from New York, a John Carpenter film. I don't know, maybe one of you guys mentioned that last week?
I thought it was called Escape from LA.
That's the sequel. Yeah.
Okay, because Ben was slagging off Escape from LA last week.
That's right. Yeah. So I watched Escape from New York, which I found quite a sort of bland, flat affair. It was like a really good setup for a movie, and it never sort of caught light. Like there was moments where it could have been unbelievably tense, and it just kind of like plodded through it. So I was a bit disappointed with that, to be honest with you. Then I watched I don't know if it's the original War of the Worlds, but War of the Worlds from the 50s. The best bit in that is when the priest gets nuked by aliens. That was good. And then Father, forgive me, for I have sinned. I watched Showgirls last night. And I have never been so bored by naked women in my life.
Isn't the scene in the pool absolutely hilarious?
Mate, take your pick. They are all absolute classics.
For anyone who hasn't seen it, there is a sex scene between Kyle MacLachlan and the lady from Saved by the Bell.
Elizabeth Berkley, yeah.
Elizabeth Berkley, thank you. And they're having sex in a pool. Now, this film is meant to be an erotic film, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this tension has been building up between this pair. And she is positioned in the pool so that his dick must be coming out of his chest because she is sat so high up on the water, throwing herself backwards, thrashing in the water as if she's having a diabetic fit. While Kyle MacLachlan, who usually I think is a very good actor, has got this weird emo fringe thing going on, and he's just going like blowing the fringe out of his eyes. Like, it's awful. It's awful in a very funny way. I find it's a very funny film to have around, get drunk.
It's a cult classic, isn't it? Where is this? Actually, I've read the trivia on the IMDb. Kyle MacLachlan said, I was absolutely, this is when he went to see it at the premiere, I was absolutely gobsmacked. I said, this is horrible, horrible. And it's a very slow sinking feeling when you're watching the movie. And the first scene comes out and you're like, oh, that's a really bad scene. But you say, well, that's okay. The next one will get better. You somehow try and convince yourself that it's going to get better. And it just gets worse. And I was like, wow, that was crazy. I mean, I really didn't see that coming.
It is a shame, though, that, you know, Paul Verhoeven had like, what, 4 or 5 big hits in a row?
Yeah.
Then he gets one stinker and that's it. His career's done.
Well, no, to be fair, no, his career's not done. Because I think we had a debate of this, didn't we? He's done some really good stuff since. I think he did Elle and what was the other one? And I think Starship Troopers is perfect.
Oh,
and
I love Starship Troopers.
Yeah, I think that was after Showgirls, but it ended her career. That was the thing.
Oh yeah, it destroyed her career.
Yeah, I just had a read as well. Apparently, Pamela Anderson, Angelina Jolie, Denise Richards, and Charlize Theron all auditioned for the role of Naomi Malone.
Man, imagine if Charlize Theron's career had been destroyed back in 1996.
She apparently fired her agent for sending her on the audition the next day.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, and so I watched that, and then the one last film which I watched again, which I've seen before, but I just watched it again 2 nights ago, and I think is perfect. Is The Ice Storm. I think that film is flawlessly good, and
I really want to see that.
Oh man, Ang Lee is a real class act when he gets it right, and there's something about that film where it's just like does not put a foot wrong. It's great, really good movie.
It's a really good cast, isn't it? Isn't it like
Sigourney Weaver, Kevin Kline, Christina Ricci, Tobey Maguire is great in it, hilariously funny. So if you haven't seen it, I would thoroughly recommend it. I think it's a great movie.
Okay.
Ben?
To be honest, I've been quite so busy at work this week. I feel I've let the team down a little bit, but I have made the effort. I've been watching, as I said, I would report back WandaVision quite a lot, especially on the way in. First 3 episodes takes a bit of getting used to. I would recommend it though, and then I've just finished watching the 4th episode today. It's very, very well written. Very well written. A lot of the things, because I read a few reviews when it came out, and people said that it's a letdown. It's a typical Disney sort of what do we call it in previous episodes? Disney does they just like spew out like
just
vomit,
sort of formulaic gray sludge.
It's just another Marvel. But the 4th episode I watched today, absolutely fantastic. Honestly, it's going to be so good. There's another 5 to go. I've also rewatched a film called The Extraction with Chris Hemsworth, which is similar sort of thing to The Hurt Locker, Dark. What was the one? What was the one they did about Osama bin Laden? Dark.
Dark 30.
Yes, it. I watched that. It's similar to that sort of thing, but it's a bit more Hollywood, if you want to call it that. It's still a very good film, actually. Very good film. It's about three or four special ops go out and they try and find a terrorist sort of thing. But it's the story of where they are rather than the kind of the end battle sort of thing about the lands that they're in. So, and I've also watched a couple of old films that my flatmate has recommended. One called The Firm, which is about football and Football Factory. Anybody out there, if you're not a huge fan of football, give them a watch because they aren't all about football. They're just about, any comedian who takes the piss out of footballers, that is exactly what they're like, and it is hilarious. It's and a very young Elijah Wood and a very young Charlie Human in The Firm. Very, very funny. And a film I watched, I've been waiting for it to come out on Netflix, a film called The Dig, with Ralph Fiennes and Carey Mulligan. I had high expectations for it and I was not disappointed. Nice. Not what you think it is. It's a really cleverly written film, and it's probably the first film I've seen in a long time where the main protagonists aren't sort of having a romance. There's nothing between them, absolutely nothing. But it's a really, really well written film, and it's oddly enough, it's a war film, but it's not a war film, if that makes sense. It's set during the Second World War, but it's there, but then they very rarely make references to it. So it's sort of another time without mentioning the obvious. So, but yeah, that's
really good, isn't she, Kerry Mulligan? I think
she's brilliant in everything she does.
Yeah. Have you ever seen An Education with her in? It's like one of the.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, that's a really good film, I think.
She's also married to what's his name? Who's the musician? Is it Rag and Bone Man?
No, Marcus Mumford.
Mumford and Sons. That's it.
Yeah.
First thing I ever saw her in was The Great Gatsby years ago.
I've not seen that.
And have you never seen The Great Gatsby?
I've seen bits of it, never watched it.
But as always, I read the book first and then I watched the film. Very well done. She's American in it. I had no idea. She was actually English. That's how convincing she was. She was bloody brilliant in that.
I'm inclined to point out that I first saw her in Doctor Who.
Yeah, she was in Doctor Who. You're right.
All roads lead back to that fucking show.
Or Resident Evil. I think we should change the podcast to Jamie. You're obsessed with Doctor Who and Resident Evil.
And we'll make a podcast that says Benton, you're obsessed with Edgar Wright.
Oh, I sure am.
The first episode with the Weeping Angels in it. Speaking of Edgar Wright, his new film does look quite good, but we won't talk about that now. Benton, have you watched anything, buddy?
I did some research because I don't typically watch romance films. So I don't like romance films. No, not in the sense of not in the sense that I just don't find that they don't emotionally tickle me. They're not the kind of thing that I usually go into just because they don't interest me. But on the other scale of Geezer, I don't enjoy war films either. So it's not like I just need violence in my thing, but I just find that it's too wholesome. It's too cheerful, or it's trying too hard to be tragic. I've often found with that there's either one or other. They'll either hit the note of way too wholesome that it makes me like have a internal.
You're going to say it makes you have a shit.
I was going to say an internal cringe, like a full body. Like I need to detox afterwards because it's just too fluffy.
I'm going to go to man thing. I'm going to break up some drywall.
Yeah, I'm going to bleed a radiator. And then all the other side, but it's like it's so obvious that it's a romance film that they're gonna just tug on your heartstrings with a good old fashioned kill off one of the characters or whatever. So I don't really go in for it. But I tried Casablanca.
Okay.
Thought that was fantastic. That was a very, very good film.
I know this is your podcast, but I will be kicking you off the podcast if you said you didn't like it.
No, I know. I did genuinely think it was very good. A lot of standout lines that I didn't realize were from Casablanca. Like, this is the start of a beautiful friendship. Right. I didn't know that was a line from Casablanca. That's awesome.
Looking at you, kid, as well.
Looking at you, kid, and of all the gin joints in all the towns and all the world.
I could be wrong, but I've got a feeling that Casablanca is one of the rare instances when they started to film without a finished script and they were kind of writing it as they were going, which usually spells for disaster.
Yeah, I'm quite shocked that it came out in 1942.
Yeah.
That is what I was like. I thought it'd be post-war because there's a lot of stuff where they're like, hey, yes, when we win the war, wink. Yeah. And I was like, wow, I'm glad that aged well. And it's not like we're under Nazi boot having to get a bootleg copy of Casablanca and then be like, wow, they were so hopeful back then, weren't they?
Like a new Lenny Riefenstahl shot ending for it where parachutes out of the plane and eats Humphrey Bogart.
It's like
interesting. Sorry, go on, Jamie, go on.
Like that moment in, has anyone ever seen or read an Inspector Calls?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a line, because that was written after the Second World War, but it's set before the second one. Yeah. And there is a line where some character very obnoxiously is going on about how it could never happen again. And the inspector is like basically saying it will happen again if people don't take responsibility. And that's meant to be one of those wink to the audiences, isn't it? Where it's like, what Mr. Lee couldn't possibly know.
Yeah.
Interesting facts about Humphrey Bogart. Did you know it was his wife who coined the phrase "the Rat Pack"?
Oh, really?
No,
Humphrey Bogart was very good friends with Frank Sinatra and sort of his mob before they became a mob. In sort of the mid-30s, and they were on a tour, I think, for a film, and they were having drinks quite late one night, and she was in bed. She came downstairs and she went, "Oh, you're like a Rat Pack, you are," and that's how the name came about.
That was Sammy Davis Jr., Frank
Dean Martin,
Sinatra.
Oh God, there's two: Joey Bishop and there's the English actor Peter. He married one of the Kennedys.
Peter O'Toole?
No.
He was a Hellraiser.
I thought Dean Martin was in the Rat Pack.
Yeah, he
was.
is. He was. I'm gonna have to Google it now. It's gonna really irritate me.
Anyway, I also watched. So I wanted one classic, one contemporary, because I thought I can't watch any more of this wholesome shit because it is rotting my bones. So I watched Casablanca as my classic, and I watched About Time as my contemporary.
Oh yes, cracking film.
I liked it. I thought it was all right. I find that when you have consequenceless time travel in a film, nothing really matters.
But it's not consequenceless. That's the point of the film.
Is it though? I mean,
did it not break your heart when he said, right, spoilers, did it not break your heart when
don't do the spoilers, I've not seen it.
Yeah, no, we're not going to spoil it. Okay,
so the thing I can't say, but he does something and it changes something. Did that not break your heart a little bit when that happened?
No, because he reversed it 10 seconds later.
Fine.
So that
but we've already established that Benson has no heart.
I just, these things are, okay, no, I can't remember the last time a film.
He said he loved her. She gave me
it's just a chemical reaction in the brain.
Yeah.
I'm not that cynical. It doesn't, I don't know, I just don't feel it, you know? I think the last thing I cried at was Derek, which would be, what, 6
Was that your boyfriend?
Yes, that was my big
when
boyfriend, Derek.
Your big prison bitch boyfriend, Derek.
Derek with Ricky Gervais.
Yes. I saw that, Jamie.
For the people at home, Jamie is pulling a face of disgust, derision.
There's a bit where the character who's like the drunk bum layabout makes like a sculpture for a dog that died, and that one got me because I love dogs. But just
maybe you should watch Lady and the Tramp. That would probably be your favorite romance.
Yeah, but it's Disney.
So with Disney.
Did
you not cry at Up? The beginning of Up?
No, I mean I was really young at the beginning of Up, so I didn't really understand. I mean, I got that she died, but I cared less.
Benson, you're not a fetus. It only came out a couple of years ago.
I think you should check the date on that.
I was at uni when it came
2009?
out. Years ago.
When did it come up?
It's 2009, I want to say.
If it's 2009, if it was 2009, then I was 13.
Yeah,
I didn't care back then. I cared less then than I do now. I think it would tickle. But I find that whenever like shows try and make you care about stuff, I don't know, it doesn't ring.
When shows make you care about stuff.
I do find now I'm getting older that it's easier for a show to emotionally affect me. Like when you're a teenager, life has no consequences to it yet, unless you were really unlucky and like your parents were murdered in a back alley by, the Joker or whatever.
I'm gonna bet money you were gonna say that. I knew he was going Batman.
Usually your life's relatively tragedy free. So it's fine. But as I'm getting older and like obviously I've lost some people close to me and things like that. I've gone through breakups and things like that now. Now I find it is much easier to make me put it this way. One of the films that makes me cry the most, so much so that I can't even watch it, and I'm ashamed to say it because it's an Adam Sandler movie.
Oh, fucking hell.
Is the
Waterboy.
Click. And it's the scene.
It's the what?
The film Click.
Okay.
And it's the scene where he goes back, he finds out his dad's died, and he goes back to try and tell his dad that he did love him. But of course he can't, because you can't affect the past, you can only view it. And he's like trying to talk to his dad, and his dad just can't see him or hear him. And every time.
I don't know. I guess just things don't like shake me that way. Maybe not yet.
But when we do our podcast remake of Wizard of Oz, you can be the Tin Man, and we'll ask for.
So anyway, to do a detox of all that wholesome shit, I watched Life on Mars, which was fucking fantastic.
The UK version, I hope.
Is there a US version?
There is, and it's trash. It's straight.
No, I watched the UK version. Fantastic. The second I started it, I had to finish it. Old Sims, fantastic. The guy who plays Glenn, I keep forgetting his name.
Gene Andrews.
Gene, not Glenn. Also fantastic. The story, the everything. And then I tried to go to Ashes, and hated it.
Don't you do this, Benton. Don't you do this.
Have you finished Ashes to Ashes yet?
I know, I've done the first 2 episodes so far, because I only recently started it. The first 2, and I just found Keely Hawes to be unbearably annoying. And I really liked her in The Bodyguard. She is unbearable. And the thing that I'm worried about is that they are demystifying the coma, which in Life on Mars was this really interesting kind of surreal thing, but she's there like, no, you're just constructs. No, you're just my subconscious. Like she's just so smug.
Benton, keep watching. For the love of God, keep watching. The second series is so dark, but it answers so many questions.
What they do without, I'm not going to tell you the plot, but what you've just said, where she's like, you're a construct. The second season completely deconstructs all of her personal beliefs about her situation. And I personally, I know it's a slightly controversial thing to say, I rewatch Ashes to Ashes more than I rewatch Life on Mars. The American version of Life on Mars, which very quickly, because we're off topic, stars Harvey Keitel as Philip Glenister, and he's awful. I know, Harvey Keitel. And the twist at the end, I'm going to spoil it because don't ever watch it.
Stop spoiling stuff.
No. This is the US version. No one's going to watch the US version.
Yeah, don't watch it, because the twist, and they can't think metaphorically, the twist at the end is literally Sam isn't in 2006 or in 1973. He's in 2053, and they're all astronauts on the manned mission to Mars.
Wow.
And the whole thing is in them in hypersleep.
Sorry, can we just break a second?
It's literally Life on Mars.
Yeah, I'm sure the moment's passed now. We can carry on.
It's literally Life on Mars.
Yeah, I've Ashes to Ashes. I tried what's it called, the new Scott Pegg and Nick Frost TV series on Amazon Prime called Truth Seekers.
Simon Pegg.
Oh yeah.
Any good?
What did I say?
I said Scott Pegg.
Oh, whoops.
Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yeah, it's all right. Like it's all right. But this is the weird thing. Simon Pegg wrote it and helped produce it, and it was billed as like the big return of these two to kind of comedy horror, like they've done many a time before, which I thought fantastic. This is brilliant. It doesn't have my boy Eddie W, but you know, it could still be good. He is in it 10, like I would say Simon Pegg is in each episode for about a minute. He is literally, he's like a guy behind a desk who gives them...
too expensive.
Yeah.
Well, he wrote it and made the show. So presumably his salary is going to be whatever the hell he sets it to. But I get it, like he's in big films, so if his agent is asking for a bigger cut, I can get why he might not be in it. But it seems odd that they build it as this big return to comedy horror with two of them, and Nick Frost is the main character, and Simon Pegg is barely in it, which just, I don't know, it didn't sit right.
Nick Frost is not a leading man.
He isn't. He's a good comedy man to the straight man, but he isn't a leading man, and it just doesn't. I don't know. It's kind of going for that protege sort of, like, you know, these characters are going to be the next ones, their replacements. But the fact that Simon Pegg just is barely in it kind of just doesn't work. Anyway, let us begin on what is the quintessential romance film. Who would like to start us off?
I will.
Go ahead.
When I found out about this topic, the first thing that came to mind, and it is always a classic, and it's probably to me anyway, the most quintessential British film ever made, which is also a romance film, Love Actually.
Yeah.
Oh, bad.
It's always Love Actually.
Yeah, I was so I was like, he's gonna say this other film, and then you said Love Actually.
There is nothing wrong with Love Actually. I love it. Alan Rickman's in it. He cheats on Emma Thompson, but we forgive him because we love him. I don't care what.
Wait, do we forgive him?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
It's a fine film, but it's too late in the game to be the quintessential one.
It's already following the leader. It can't be set in new trends, can it? Unless you want to argue that everything post Love Actually is Love Actually clones.
Well, okay, fine. If you're gonna, if I determined quintessential to mean something that is, if you want to call it, for lack of a better word, typical to.
It's like the pinnacle. It is the most romance film that has ever been.
Yeah.
Right.
For me, I mean, if you want to go back further, you could argue things you've already said it to, like Casablanca. If you want to argue that is a romance film. It isn't. Again, how do you define romance? Because there's so many genres of it. You've got Passengers with Chris Pratt and
which should have been a horror.
Which should have been a horror. I agree. That you could class as a romance, but is it really? I mean, it's down to opinion.
Most film, especially most American films, even if they are not outright romance films, will have quite a heavy romance subplot in them. Even if they have to crowbar that bad boy in. Did anyone want Hulk shagging Black Widow? No, but they crowbarred that in there,
and they didn't even give it any payoff.
No,
exactly. Because it's a tale as old as time for American stuff. If you're asking, if I was to say, so yeah, I think quintessential. It's not necessarily a favorite one, not necessarily the first either. To take horror as an example, to take slasher films, Black Christmas is the first slasher film, but I wouldn't argue it's the quintessential one. Halloween is the quintessential one because it popularized all the tropes, and basically every slasher that came after Halloween was copying Halloween. The problem with films, because I would pick Roman Holiday, but it's very old. I feel like it's not a typical romance film, actually, at least not as we know it now, because the genre has evolved. If we were having this argument in the 60s, I would have said Roman Holiday, definitely. Phenomenal acting from Audrey Hepburn, by the way. Honestly, I'm actually a big Audrey Hepburn fan. I've got most of her films. She's incredible. She made me cry my eyes out. You know, she's so very, very subtle for a performance of that time as well. Because at the beginning of the film, it's all very theatrical and like, and then at the end, when you're expecting her to have this big breakdown because the sad thing happens, she doesn't. She holds it back, and it's just like this single tear.
Yeah, that's always more heartbreaking. Watching somebody trying not to cry is far more heartbreaking than watching somebody just fucking let it all out. Do you know what I mean?
But I would argue that the genre has evolved over the years, and I think that the quintessential modern, I say modern, we are talking more than 30 years old, but the quintessential romance film that is still relevant today, it still gets special edition releases today, people still quote it. I'm going to yell the quote, I'm going to say the quote in a minute, and you're all going to know what film what I mean. The quintessential romantic film is Nobody Puts Baby in a Corner, Dirty Dancing.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Titanic.
No, fuck Titanic. It's a garbage movie for garbage people. I'm kidding. It's okay, but like it's too long. Cut it down, Jim Cameron. Seriously. We bought a ticket to watch a boat sink. Why is it 2 hours before the boat sinks? No, Dirty Dancing. Let's just talk about Dirty Dancing for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was exposed to Dirty Dancing as a kid because it's my mum's favourite movie. So I had.
It's everybody's mum's favourite film.
Yeah.
What?
It's everybody's mum's favourite film.
Exactly. Thank you, Ben, for just making my argument for me. Right. This is the movie that made, like, my mum told me, she was like, literally, you know, like some of us sad nerds saw Endgame at the cinema like 4 times, or Last Christmas 4 times. She was like, that's what Dirty Dancing was for girls in the 80s. They saw it like 5, 6, 7 times. It made... I mean, I know he did other films, but let's be honest, it is the film that made Patrick Swayze the icon that he is.
I thought it'd be Point Break, but
it's no
Roadhouse.
Definitely Dirty Dancing.
Roadhouse.
It's a very easily watchable film. And as I was, so this time when I watched it, this time was the first time I've seen it in about 15 years, and it's all there. It's very Romeo and Juliet. I mean, arguably the quintessential romance story is Romeo and Juliet, but it's all there. You know, she's this innocent.
That's more of a lust story, and that's part of my argument later. But
true, she's the innocent young girl. He's the bad boy from the wrong side of the tracks. Their parents.
He's not really bad. He's got a heart of gold, isn't he?
Yeah.
This is Casablanca. You're describing Casablanca.
Yeah, but it's okay because this is a problem with Casablanca and Roman Holiday. Like Gregory Peck, I think we can all agree, no homo. Gregory Peck is a handsome man, but he's a very 50s man in it. But Patrick Swayze is like every modern girl's dream. He's masculine, he's attractive, but he's got a soft side too, you know, because he's a dancer. He comes and defends her from her parents because the parents don't approve. And can we talk about the soundtrack for a second? It is like the romance movie soundtrack. Every song on it is fantastic. Every song on it is a guarantee to get played on the radio every day. I still hear Hungry Eyes every day on the radio at work.
Didn't Swayze sing that?
No, he sings She's Like the Wind.
That's it.
That's on the radio all the time. And I guarantee you there hasn't been a single wedding that hasn't played I've Had the Time of My Life. Don't, Dave, because I can see the look on your face. You're going to tell me they didn't play it at yours, aren't you?
Well, absolutely not. They would not play that on my wedding. We played System of a Down at my wedding.
He's the exception to the rule. Every school prom since the 80s has ended with I've had the time of my life.
I mean, I don't know if that's an endorsement or not.
There is only one problem with it.
Right.
It's set in the 80s.
Exactly. The last time of innocence.
Wait. Hold up. Dirty Dancing is not set in the 80s.
No, you're right. It's made in the 80s. It's set in the 60s.
Yeah. Made in the 80s. Fair enough. Made in the 80s.
I'm going to sort of slightly come to well, I don't know if Jamie needs defending it because I don't know if anyone's going to disagree with him, but I'm going to throw a bit of support in for Dirty Dancing. Dirty Dancing is a film which, to sort of, you know, go back to what you were saying earlier, Benson, where it's like that sort of, you can tell a film is manipulating you, and that can sometimes be very, very off-putting. What I like about Dirty Dancing is I know it's being completely manipulative. I know it's done by the book. I know Patrick Swayze is a perfect man who doesn't exist in the real world, but I don't care. It's done so well and so, in such a charming way that, you know, if it's on, yeah, fuck it, I'm going to watch the whole film.
Yeah, but you could say that about Love Actually, though. He has a Portuguese housemaid who he then travels to Portugal to try and tell her that he loves her. Nobody would do that, but you don't care. And also, Sam at the end, when he runs through the airport, no way would you do that, but he's running to catch her at the plane.
This is
to tell her that he likes her.
Ben, the problem with Love Actually, don't get me wrong, I'm not denying it's a good film. I do like Love Actually. But the problem with Love Actually arguing that it's the quintessential one is the thing that makes it unique, makes it different from every other love film, in that it's about 12 different stories knitted together. It isn't boy, girl, we follow them. And I do think it limits the emotional payoff of Love Actually, because I'm a bit like jumping from character to character to character.
I disagree. I think it's what Hugh Grant says at the beginning, that love actually is all around. I know Bill Nighy's a bit of, but then Bill Nighy actually, that's a good. Bill Nighy is you know, it's all the different stories of love. So you've got the young love, you've got the married love, you've got homosexual love, you've got the kind of weird love with Martin Freeman in whatever her name is, from Gavin and Stacey, doing a porn film.
I forgot about that bit. Yeah,
it's all different. It's all different types of love, if you like. And as I said earlier, there are so many different genres of it. Dirty Dancing, the boy meets girl. If you did that now, it would bomb.
I think it would be a drop in the ocean, wouldn't it?
Well, I would like to. Here's where I'd like to combat you, and I'm just going to get some figures up.
When Jamie wants to say something that he feels passionate about, the
mic comes up.
On his mic.
The mic suddenly clicks back.
Yeah, so I really wanted to.
I'm just getting figures to prove myself right. So I would never argue this is the quintessential one, but it obviously is a film I love. I'd like to talk momentarily about Last Christmas.
Hold up. Before you start going on about Last Christmas, let's let everybody else have their say. Okay, so Benson, what are you going to go for?
I would argue, yes, that Casablanca is the one of the quintessential, except that it isn't, in the sense that they don't end up together, which deviates from the norm in many a way. It's got the character who's the hardened character with the heart of gold. Literally, that is him. He is, I don't want to stick my neck out for anyone, but I secretly do. She is a femme fatale who broke his heart from before, but now they're meeting in the City of Love. Technically, they just left the City of Love, and now they're in the backup. But, you know, it's very, Well, the best thing I liked about it is that it is not a story solely about romance. There is something going on, and there is a romantic story entwined with it. It isn't boy meets girl or boy meets girl again, and they all live happily ever after. I know they don't, but it isn't that. It's Nazis are looking for, they're looking for these exit visas, and they people are desperately trying to get out of Casablanca. There's historical background. Same with About Time. It isn't just boy meets girl. It's boy has the ability to go back in time at his choice. So putting a little spin on it, giving it a little gimmick, something that makes it interesting, or weaving narrative into it, so it isn't just sappy romance the entire time. I'm not really helping my case.
It's like the complications of Casablanca which make it so great, isn't it? Like there's nothing easy about their relationship. You've got the whole kind of, obviously the war thing going on, the fact that she's married.
Yes, that one doesn't help.
She's married, but she's married to a really great guy. Like that's, I think you often get that in rom-coms where, it's
the other guy's a bastard.
Like with somebody in a relationship, but the person in a relationship is obviously such a huge dick that nobody, would want them to be together. What's so good in Casablanca is, I can't forget the actor's name now, but he's so like
Humphrey Bogart.
There's a film that I think epitomizes my issue with romance stuff, and that like Jamie says, that it's crowbarred into, and I call this the near perfect film, or it could have been perfect, however, it is not good, and that is The Secret Life of Walter Schmidt. If any of you have heard of it.
No, I've heard really good things about it on a podcast recently, and I'm mean to watch it. Yeah.
So I won't spoil it. But
Walter Mitty.
Yes, that's it. And it's Ben Stiller, who I don't really never really held in high regard, because he was usually he was on kind of the popcorn rom-coms. He was the everyman who filled in for Jim Carrey when he couldn't do it. I didn't really. But this is one that he directed. I don't know if he wrote it, but he was in it as well. And it was just a story about self-discovery. It's a story about, going out there, seizing the day, living your life. And at the very start, he's kind of this bottled up introvert who's not appreciated at his job. And he daydreams a lot. Whenever he sees stuff, he's always daydreaming. And it was so true to my own life, where I was like, if only. But then when he actually starts seizing the day, it's not brought up, but he starts daydreaming less because he's doing more with his life, and he's not wishing for something else. He's actually seizing the day. Fantastic message to it. The problem was he couldn't escape the bad stuff that litters the kind of those films that he managed to escape. So it's got this romance scene, it's got this romance plot that's kind of just crowbarred in for the sake of it. It's got this overly dickish villain who is just an arsehole for the sake. It's like his boss, who's just an arsehole, over the top arsehole for the sake of it. And it's like it could have been perfect if they just stuck to that, but they crowbarred in that other stuff. And I think romance subplots where they don't need to be there is one of the worst things. Whereas romance plots that are woven into the story but aren't necessarily a romance story is romance when it's at its best, is my opinion.
Yeah.
I can't stand stories that are just romance, but some of my favorite romance stories are ones that are woven into a larger narrative, but they do belong to be there. They aren't just in there just to give some feels to whoever to whoever is watching it, for a kind of a cheap or a cheap oh no moment, but rather it feels like John Wick was an example I gave to Jamie beforehand, where there's no romance subplot in it. It is literally just a man who is out for revenge, and they don't. There's some like women who he has history with, and you think, oh, is it going to be romance? Thank God it isn't, though, because they don't want it getting in the way of the character, the story, the pacing, the brilliant action. It is just it doesn't need to be there, and it isn't there.
You picked a very odd topic tonight, considering you are going against everything that you've just set out of a romance. My favourite romance film is John Wick Chapter 2.
I'm more sitting out the point that I think the romance by itself is not for me. So obviously take everything I say with a nice healthy dose of salt. but it is at its best when it belongs in the story and not when it doesn't.
So take, for example, I don't know, Grease, for example. It's not what?
I don't watch musicals.
You've never seen Grease, though?
I've never seen Grease.
Oh, man. Okay, fine. Let me think of another one.
I mean, it's not fine though. Let's not.
It's not fine. No, it's not fine at all.
I can't stand musicals.
No, I think we should change this podcast to "You've never seen this, Ben." Okay. Oh, I've got one. The Bodyguard.
I think. Well, wait. I think.
Why? Hang on. What, Ben? Why did you think that Benson was going to like The Bodyguard after that?
No. I liked The Bodyguard. I think the romance bit in it was unnecessary.
Are we talking about the Whitney Houston film? We're talking about the TV series.
I'm talking about the TV series.
Oh no, I'm talking.
No. The Whitney Houston film.
I've never seen that.
Oh, that right.
Yeah.
So give you a rundown of that film, right? So basically, she's this pop star that's on the rise, and Kevin Costner comes in as a sort of security manager sort of thing. In the beginning,
a bodyguard, if you will.
A bodyguard, yeah. Well, he doesn't. No, but he doesn't start as a bodyguard, though, does he? He becomes her bodyguard, and he's there to protect her. He's not really interested in her. He thinks she's stupid. She's floozy. She doesn't really care. And then it's that famous scene where they're in the rain after a concert, he picks her up in her arms sort of thing, and she realizes it's like a trust thing between them rather than love, if you like. But then he then comes into love because he's been so professional and he does a job. By the end of it, he really starts to care for her. And apart from the fact that the soundtrack is amazing, but if you want to call it that, it's not. You're not watching it for the romance. You're watching it to see if they can come to, I don't want to say love because it's not the word I want to use. They want to come to some sort of respect for each other, and the fact that they don't actually get together. Spoiler, in the end. So it's more that she.
Can I just say, Ben, it doesn't count if you say spoiler after you've said.
After I've said it,
I'll put spoiler tags in. Don't worry.
But yeah, no, and then Bodyguard, definitely one to watch. Definitely one to watch.
Yeah, I'd like to argue a couple of points here. The first is something Ben said a little while ago about a film wouldn't be profitable these days if it was a boy meets girl film. I would like to point out that A Star Is Born made $436.2 million, and Last Christmas, which everyone slates, made $121.6 million. Now, I know half of that was just from me, but and I did notice something, because now this brings me on to what I want to argue Benton on. So Benton's just made some comments there, and I'm not going to argue with you personally, Benton, because this is an attitude a lot of film people hold. I'm going to argue with the general attitude. You've said several things like this about romance films being manipulative, easy, trash, things like that.
I've never called them trash, and I think that there are good romance films out there. They just aren't for me.
No, but I actually think romance films are one of the hardest I'm not talking like comedy romance. I'm talking pure romantic dramas. I think are some of the hardest movies to make. And I did notice, I'm not even, although I love Last Christmas, I would never sit here and insult you all by claiming it is like the best Christmas film or best romance film. But something that really caught my attention with it, and it does go into this growing issue of critics not lining up with audience consensus anymore. There was almost a targeted campaign against that movie. The Guardian alone published 4 separate 1-star reviews of Last Christmas. And when you actually read their reviews, if they were saying things like the acting's bad or whatever, I'd have supported them. I'd have said, fine, that's your, yeah. If they'd have pointed out that there's this awful moment in Last Christmas where the film's going along exactly as you think it is, and out of nowhere, you can tell a scene's been filmed afterwards and put in to try and make the film more relevant.
Or was this the Brexit scene?
Halfway through, there's randomly a scene where they're watching a Brexit march on TV, and Emma Thompson's crying because people hate immigrants, but then herself makes an anti-immigrant joke, which I don't know what this says about British audiences. All 4 times I saw it in the cinema, that was the joke that got the most laughs. It was the anti-immigrant joke.
What you mean in Brexit voting Essex that got a load?
Yeah.
Who would have thunk?
it was getting all these terrible reviews, and that's very unusual for one newspaper to print 4 1-star reviews. It was as if that, and when you read them, it was as if their problem with the film is that they didn't believe that films like this should exist anymore. Their big problem with it was that it dared to be a soppy, what's the word for, optimistic film.
Sentimental.
That was, thank you, Dave. That was actually a word that they kept bringing it up.
Yeah.
First of all, what's wrong with sentimental? The world is shit at the minute. I know, for me personally, Ben Smurden, I know you're obviously a director. Benton, I know you do some writing. Dave, I know you're a creative guy. I'm sure deep down inside, as I'm sure all wannabe writers, directors, whatever you have your magnum opus, yeah? The project that is in you that you've not made it yet because you keep telling yourself you're not ready, you're not good enough to pull it off. Well, for me, that is a romance drama that I've written the first draft of. And the reason I literally started trying to produce it and I didn't, because I genuinely think it's the best thing I've ever written. It definitely is over sentimental. And I want to give it the respect it deserves. And so basically, I'm having a bit of a rant against the state of the world at the minute, where romance is viewed as this dirty word now. Like, you're foolish if you fall in love, especially with younger generations. I see this a lot, falling in love is stupid, and you should always be ready to cheat on your partner at a moment's notice because they'll cheat on you first. And these are genuine attitudes that crop up with lots of younger people. I don't know if it's the invention.
Sorry, I'm going to just call bullshit on that. Where are you getting that from?
From relationship advice podcasts I've been listening to.
Yeah,
to be fair, I remember that if this is the podcast you're talking about, Jamie,
it's that is the number 2 rated podcast in America, beaten only by Joe Rogan. People are listening to this stuff, and obviously, out of all of us, I think I'm the only single one at the minute. Dating is hell at the minute, because it's all done on Tinder now, where people outright lie. It's all photoshopped images and stuff like that. And it is. Everyone is talking to 12 people at once. So there's no
intimacy.
Yeah, there's no intimacy. And there's no...
Yeah, but that's your choice to use, Tinder. You can still meet people. I mean, we can't now currently because of the virus, but meeting people is still a very viable option.
Yeah. I think the argument... I do think you have some valid arguments there, I will defend it in one way, which is that, again, you choose to use Tinder. You don't have to use it, and you have to look at the type of people these days. Especially, you take a romance film that was made. You look at the 90s. You think Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility. It was that sort of film genre that was in the 90s, especially for romance. Nowadays, you don't see many of them. Yeah. And I think when it comes to, again, I'm going to slate off the media for this. You look at the Last Christmas, for example, Emilia Clarke and whatever his name is, Henry Golding. Again, nobody in the real life looks like that. And that is the problem these days, is that especially Hollywood actresses and actors, they don't look like you and I.
Yeah. That's always been the case, though, isn't it? I mean, Hollywood.
It's always been the case, but
been incredibly good-looking people.
Yeah. Of course, they have. But But again, this is before the invention of, say, Tinder. You go up to a girl in a bar and you ask her out, or you buy her a drink, and she can flip you off. You can go and do it with someone else, and they might say yes.
Yeah.
But on Tinder, you don't have that. You message and no one comes back to you. So there's no real loss there. You haven't lost anything. The one person here who is actually in a very seriously committed relationship, i.e. a marriage, Dave, let's have your take on it.
On what? Sorry, what am I putting my take on?
No, in the sense of like in films, romance films, say La La Land, for example.
Yeah.
Actually, I just a quick side note, La La Land and what was the Hugh Jackman one? The Greatest Showman. They came out relatively similar. I thought Greatest Showman was a piece of wank. La La Land actually shat all over Greatest Showman. But in La La Land, it was fairly realistic. They start out as boyfriend and girlfriend. They're trying to make it in Hollywood. The stresses of their life get in the way, and they end up, spoiler alert, they break up. And then you've got films like Last Christmas and Love Actually, Pretty Woman, all that sort of thing. Those films, they're not true. But being as the only married one here, what's your take on it?
I think I tend to like the bittersweet ones. I sent like a shortlist over to Benson and Jamie in the week, and all of them virtually end with the couples not getting together at the end. So I don't know what it says about my marriage, but I really like that. I think for me though, the best sort of romance films are the ones that acknowledge that love and long-term relationships aren't perfect. And don't get me wrong, I'm very, very happy with my marriage. I love my wife very, very much, and as far as I'm aware, we'll be together until my dying day. But I think for me, the films that kind of really cut the deepest are those ones that kind of acknowledge that actually it's quite an insane thing to do, to say, this one person, I'm going to spend the rest of my life with you. But just acknowledge. I mean, I love The Apartment. I think that's a really wonderful film, and also Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And in both of those, you get this sense of the couples at the end of it are acknowledging that it's going to be difficult at best, maybe impossible, but they're just going to do it anyway. They're going to sort of roll the dice. And I think for me, that's the most like beautiful, real and romantic thing, rather than, films which kind of just say, and at the end they got married, end of movie. For me, I like that kind of hints that there will be something beyond that wedding day, and it won't always be sunshine. There will be a lot of that. But
so BoJack Horseman was very heavy on that. Was the talking about the happily ever after, but what about the day after the happy ever after? And they were they focused on that quite a lot. Yeah. He is kind of in his, not just in his career as a has-been, but in sort of the two of the main characters, Diane and her husband, their marriage, that they have their happy ever after, but then there's the day after the happy ever after, and sort of how those issues, and then just ultimately trying to find a place where you're happy in yourself, and be able to love yourself so that you can love others, as opposed to having people in your life just to fix yourself.
That's a RuPaul thing. She says, how are you going to love somebody if you can't love yourself?
Yeah.
And amen up in here.
Actually, I have a question. Why is it that romance films, not really nowadays, maybe in the last 50, 60 years, why are all war films romantic? Most of them, not all of them, but about 70% of them say. So An Officer and a Gentleman, take that as an example. Why is war romantic?
I think that we might just be that we romanticize war. Is just to flip it back on it. Is that
it's ironic?
Yeah, that we do romanticize a lot of history, and a lot of the film in a sense is supposed to romanticize situations, or is supposed to show them as bleak as possible.
It ups the stakes, doesn't it? I guess though, war. It's that thing of, I think for a lot of people, it was probably a good aphrodisiac, thinking, I might die tomorrow, so let's
knock one out.
Let's make out. I think the other thing as well is that like somebody who's like
Benson just completely ruined that argument. War is so romantic. I might die tomorrow. Yeah, let's bang one out.
Excuse you, I said knock one out. I wasn't that crass.
But is it that thing of like, as well, just soldiers are very sexy to some people, right? And like fun and sexy, and if you go, I don't know, I think it just ups the stakes, doesn't it?
Yeah, I get that.
Well. Let's take the First World War for instance, right? A lot of the soldiers who got drafted into that war were very younger than any of us are now, right?
I think I'd be too old to get drafted now.
They were men. No, not yet, mate.
Jamie might be, but
no, I'm not too old, but I'm. For once, being a fat fuck would have gone in my favour for my weight. The rest of you all would have been.
No, I'm short-sighted and I got broken arches. That's two. Oh, and yeah, that's my two.
My point is, just think about it for a minute. Imagine what we're going through at the moment, right? We all had plans. Everyone's got plans. Gordon's got plans. The cops have plans. We all had plans, right? And COVID's fucked them. And it is a bit tragic. Think about all the people who this lockdown started, and while they've been in lockdown, their grandmas died, or their granddad. So my friend Rob died right at the start of the first lockdown. Now, luckily, I say luckily, there's no luckily in dying. It was early enough that I was able to see him in the hospital beforehand, but I couldn't go to the funeral. In fact, I think the only people who could go to the funeral were his sister, his kids, and his mum. I think that was it. Now, imagine that turned up to 1,000. It's World War One. The world's a lot more naive back then. There's these young couples who've just got married, because people were getting married at 18, 19, 20 back then. They've just got married. They're probably planning on having kids. You know, he's going to go and get an internship at the local butchery or whatever. She's working in sewing or whatever. And this war comes along, and the government are proper promoting this. I don't know if you've ever studied World War One. The government went in really overconfident.
Oh yeah, they're very. They kind of played off how patriotic or patriotic
your country needs you. And they really made them think that they needed them.
But also they played off kind of anti-cowardice stuff as well, where they'd have posters where it's like your child asking you what you did in the war, and then the dad's got like this horrified expression where he clearly didn't go over. There's a lot of propaganda on all sides of the. But that's the thing about World War One as well that makes it even more bleak. Was that it wasn't good versus evil. It was just young boys being thrown at each other.
Yeah.
And you think of the poetry as well that came out of World War One. I mean, let's face it, poetry is not exactly the top of anyone's list at the moment, and it hasn't been for a long time. But there's more poetry came out of World War One and more stories that came out of the wars that any of us could count. Half of it hasn't even been made into films. And it's I do think the patriotism is especially I think like say take War Horse for example, or Private Peaceful. I love Private Peaceful. I haven't seen that. I'm going to watch that actually. I haven't watched that film in a long time.
Good film.
Private Peaceful. The two sons are drafted to war. It's not a love story in the sense of a romance, but it is a love story between families. So would you class that as a romance? Because it's all about love.
It's kind of like Frozen, the twist at the end of Frozen.
Yeah. Oh, for God's sake! I'm just talking about Private Peaceful, World War One. Oh, I love Frozen.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean though.
The connection. That's
I think when if you say romance films, you think of eros love, not unconditional family love. And never the twain shall meet. But
unless you're watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre
or Hamlet.
Yes, but I had a point, and now it's give me a second. It'll come back to me. No one talk.
Was it about how there's different kinds of love?
Oh, I was talking about new like modern age thing. I think the reason that modern age romances are seen as sentimental is that they haven't evolved with the times. And so they are boy meets girl, everyone lives happy ever after, is known as, it is kind of seen now as this false promise, as this fool's gold.
Even the way you just said it, which is boy meets girl, like that.
Happy ever after. Yeah. It's a sing-song kind of, it isn't. I know that there is, there's definitely, they say like 50%, but I think it's definitely, there's still the capacity for love in the world. It's just that, is kind of I think we're just more cynical as a people, and we don't want to see the same story over again. But I think COVID would be one that just occurred to me. But for instance, my own situation that we dated for about 5 months before COVID kicked in, and then suddenly we've spent the next year of our relationship basically seeing her dad's high risk, so we see each other. Well, we don't during lockdowns, and had to be really careful during kind of the lower tiers. And obviously that's, the trials and tribulations. I think a film about the trials and tribulations of sort of romance during these lockdowns could actually be quite an interesting, or do it more metaphorically and be like a situation similar to COVID, or a situation where you are kept apart by, because long distance relationships are becoming more commonplace, and you're finding like that romance is changing as well with technology. When you think about how when our parents would court, it would be over the phone, and they'd have maybe an hour, 2 hours to talk, and then that'd be it. That's your lot. Just talking about like how I think romance has changed, not with like technology. the fact that we could instantly talk to people all the time, I think is a change in the dynamic. Because obviously when our parents did it, they could talk maybe for an hour a day, they'd see each other, but ultimately you wouldn't be in contact all the time. I think that there's dating apps, dating sites, and also that the romance field has changed more, as we're trying to be more equal, we're trying to be more progressive as a society. The dating game is more equal now. That it's changed, but romance films haven't changed to represent that. They are still boy meets girl, happy ever after. They haven't gotten with the times, as it were. And the time now is that a lot of people swiping on a phone because they want to get their rocks off.
There has been, I'll disagree in only one way, because I think you're right about a lot of it. There has been a noticeable uptick in the last, say, 5 years in the amount of gay and lesbian romance films.
Well, that's
so
good.
That is an area that's starting to be explored, but you are correct. Those films don't tend to be the ones that get massive, wide releases. They tend to go straight to Netflix or limited release. Not to use, because it is true, all my experience of film from studying it at school to today, and I'm sure Dave will probably agree with me, is it's a very, same with fashion trends, it's cyclical. And I do think you're right, we're living in a very cynical age at the moment. I think at some point, romance films will be back on top again for a little while. That it's just what falls in and out of favor, because we are cynical, but there'll be a time where we dare to have hope again. I'm hoping after COVID. That's kind of what I meant when I said about the 80s being the last non-cynical generation, even though they were a little bit, but it's all downhill from the 90s.
There's a little less mysticism with them too, because we know more, but also that there's more. And I will talk about how sex scenes are the worst thing ever, the biggest blight on film in a future podcast. But you watch old films like Casablanca, and the second that they kiss, it fades to black. We can't show any more of that. That's as much as you're allowed. That there's still kind of like there's a mystical implication to their relationship where it isn't all just kind of bared against the wall. But as we become kind of more
desensitized,
not just desensitized, but also we become more, I'm thinking, candid. We become more candid with romance, that there's less mysticism to it, that you used to get kind of like cheeky double entendres and kind of more cheeky double entendres and implications, inferences that you'd have to make.
There's no subtlety anymore.
There isn't anymore. Whereas now, they're more than happy to kind of go into very vivid detail.
I don't know actually. I agree. Obviously, films are more explicit now in those things, but I would say that's more to do with like it might be sex and things like that. But I think it goes back to that thing that we were talking about a little while ago. I think with our emotions, actually, I think we are probably more candid than ever. I think there's a reluctance to kind of let those barriers down and do that. And I think actually that's something that could be really rich and explored in a film, and that can be incredibly romantic. But yeah.
I think there's not just film. If you look at the arts in general, when it comes to sex and explicitity, has anyone, you might be about to tell me that I've actually just got a dirty mind, but has anyone heard the song Black Magic by Little Mix?
No. I know Black Magic Woman by Fleetwood Mac, and it's incredible.
Yeah. Magic. If you go and, I could be wrong, I might just be having a dirty mind here, but if you go and listen to the lyric, actually listen to the words of that song, the whole song is about going down on women.
Is it?
I'm telling you now, it is. And it's about the power of the vagina to make men do things, which of course is completely true. Men have fought wars over vaginas. Troy, for instance.
Okay. That's not the Iliad wasn't a historical account, Jamie.
I'm
No, but
loving the idea of one day Jamie being like, I'm going to ditch this NHS job and get a job as a history teacher. Okay, kids, lesson number one.
Okay.
The
All
war of
wars
the
are fought about
vagina.
some
How
good
many
person.
how many wars were fought over Cleopatra then?
That's the point.
Specifically her vagina.
Well, point
Result.
is, even a teeny bop band like Little Mix that is clearly aimed at younger audiences are sexually explicit. So
Where is that going off the topic klaxon gone? Have we got that anywhere?
No, I think I get what you mean though, that we're in post sexual revolution era, that we're talking about how films are changing and romances films are still just as subject to this to everything else. Horror is another one that suffered from this. The fact that we're desensitized to gore. I think that it's a valid point that if our opinions of love have changed, the films need to change with it, or else they are. You can have one of those old classic or one of those good old moral value kind of films, or like in what's it called? No Country for Old Men, where they're like, hey, where there's that whole thing about, did the world get bad? Like, when did the world get so hard and bad? And then the other character's like, mate, it's been like that forever. Like, It's been that bad since the Romans. It's been that bad since before. That perhaps a film looking back at romance and how romance has changed, or how romance maybe hasn't changed, it's just the same as it always was, is something that, something that might be a good story to do. But I think that Jamie's right in that we're becoming more brazen and we're becoming more crass, that there's a sort of that the film magic of kind of just a little implication, a little bit of cheekiness, a little bit of something that goes a long way, is kind of, we're looking at that in the past now. Things are a bit more I just the difference between About Time and Casablanca is kind of, I think, has epitomized that for me, of modern and contemporary and classic romance.
But I think you're comparing a really great movie with a not really great movie. You know what I mean? I don't think the issue here is that, like, things have, that it's that we've lost something. I don't think. I think it's changed, and I think like that. And I think what you're talking about No Country for Old Men is the perfect actually analogy. Is that things have changed? They have to change. That is just the nature of time, isn't it? And I think that's a good thing most of the time. And I think that there's this inclination to think that romance is no longer here. Like, we live in this unromantic age. I don't think. I think we do still have romance. It's just different to the romance of 1940s. And so it should be, right?
No, I definitely still believe there's romance.
Yeah.
Just that I think that our opinion of it has altered over the years. I think the breakdown of...
But I think that's it. That it's altered. It hasn't been lost. I think that's kind of... I'm sort of keen to stress that. I think there's some people, I'm not saying you guys, by the way, but I think there's some people who kind of had this feeling that there is no such thing as romance anymore. And I think that's absurd. I think, there's still only 12 notes, and we're kind of constantly seeing what we can do with those 12 notes, and there's still only 7 stories, whatever it is. But ultimately, we are still human beings, and we still like love, and we want to see that on the screen, don't we?
Although going back to, I remembered an article I read, just going back to desensitizing, say Cardi B, Little Mix, writing songs, that sort of thing. I remember when Jodie Whittaker became the Doctor. And I read an article a couple of days later. Do you know what the top Googled search was for Doctor Who after they made that announcement? It was Jodie Whittaker, basically nude. That was the first thing. That was the biggest search related to Doctor Who that came up after she was made Doctor. And that, I think, one, is disgusting, and second, it just proves that, okay, not romance as such, but female actresses in television and film are so stereotyped that even now it forces people to look at the obvious. When you go, the Doctor isn't meant to be that. That's not her character. You are doing that because she is a female actress. If you took that away, I guarantee you romance films would still be popular today, because you have to have the most beautiful and the most sexy and the one person that everybody wants in the latest romance film. It's like Don Johnson in not Don Johnson, Don John with Scarlett Johansson. She was cast in that. I mean, great film, don't get me wrong, but she was cast in that, and she openly says, I think it was a red carpet thing. So after I watched it, she openly said that she was offered the role because she was voted the sexiest woman of all time. I think it was, I don't know what magazine it was, but she won it that year, and that was primarily why she was cast.
Well, yeah, of course that happens. But the thing is, I think it is less about looks, because I think, for me, the key thing that romance films rest on that we haven't really talked about yet, and I do also want to get on to talking about another way in which they're changing, maybe for the worse, but we'll get to that in a moment. The thing that all key romance films rely on is the chemistry of the two people who are meant to be falling in love. La La Land works because Gosling and Emma Stone have got amazing chemistry. That's actually not the first time that they've played lovers in a film. They actually were also in
Crazy Stupid
Love. Thank you. Yeah, they were in that together, and they were amazing in it together. There was a film a while ago called Trust the Man that had Julianne Moore and David Duchovny in it. They had great chemistry together. I've talked about my quintessential choice. My favorite rom-com or favorite romance is a film called Serendipity, which I watch every year. And I can't argue it's the quintessential one, because it's very much not quintessential, in the sense that the two people who are meant to be in love, they spend 10 minutes together at the beginning of the film, and then they do not see each other again for the entire runtime of the film until the very end. And the chemistry between John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale, those are two of my favorite actors of all time. I think they're both amazingly talented performers, and it genuinely saddens me that they've kind of disappeared out of the limelight a little bit lately. Their chemistry together is so good that you spend the entire rest of that film aching for them to be together. And someone did mention, was it Casablanca, where the partner isn't a douchebag? The partner's Serendipity does the same thing, because they spend 10 minutes together, but they can't be together because they've both got partners. There's a time jump of a couple of years, I think, and then they've both moved on with other people. And the other people are not bad people. They're quite realistically written characters. But the chemistry between Kate and John at the beginning was so powerful that you kind of hate these people. And it's not their fault. Like, they're perfectly normal people. But you're just like, yeah, but you're not her or him.
That's the problem. You've just pointed on it. They are normal people. Yeah. And that the relationship that John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale have in those first 10 minutes, and I have seen this film a very long time ago, admittedly, but I have seen this film. The first 10 minutes, I will agree, is massively powerful, but it's normal people, normal life. And that is where romance films, in my opinion, fall down. It's that you are painting this image to an audience that this is love. No, love can be anything from bringing home flowers one day just because you care to taking them out for dinner. It spans such a wide variety of things.
To be fair, I do see what some critics mean when they talk about how romance films can be dangerous because they set unrealistic expectations. But you do have to. I think I'm quite good at knowing the difference between fiction and reality, but I've got to admit, if I had my choice, the way I want to meet my future wife is both, like in Serendipity, we both reach for the last thing on the shelf. There's the meet cute, or you're in a bar and you look across the room and time seems to slow down. Lady in Red's playing on the jukebox. You see her across a smoky room. You turn to your buddy and you go, "That's the girl I'm going to marry." Of course I want that. Who doesn't? Yeah, it's not real. Like that, it happens once in a million times, maybe. So even someone like me, who I think is quite good at separating them, it can.
Ideally, though, it's still a beautiful thought, and it's so much nicer than hunched over in your bed, swiping left and right on photos.
Exactly. But I think though and it will happen. Somebody needs to make the film which shows that romance and love can be found on Tinder, right?
Yeah, as long as Don't find a serial killer.
I mean, I met my girlfriend on Tinder, and we both have the same idea. We both go, yeah, Tinder isn't perfect, but let's face it, she lives like near Tilbury way, and I live. I'm not going to say where I live because I don't want people to know where I live. On this podcast.
About your girlfriend's
fine sending them Tilbury way though.
They'll never come back. It's fine. But we met on Tinder, and we both agreed. We said, yeah, it's not the perfect setting, meeting on flipping photos and that. She said, but look at it this way. She went, I would never have gone to Intertown here, and I would have never gone to Tilbury because we wouldn't have done. But
that's what makes it romantic, and that's what sort of getting at with like Eternal Sunshine and The Apartment and things like that, is that it's the reality of it. It's the have you ever seen the film High Fidelity with John Cusack?
Yeah.
There's one bit in that. Well, I don't think it's the greatest movie ever made, but I do really like it. There's one bit in there where he talks about underwear on the radiator, and he said, like, in my fantasy, the women who I meet day to day, who I fantasize about, they've got like amazing underwear. But he said, at my home, like, she's got the Grundy underwear, which she's just got hanging over the radiator. And he's saying, those women that I meet, they have that underwear too, but it's not part of the fantasy. But that's what makes the relationship he has with his girlfriend at the end of it what the most romantic thing is, because he learns to love that, and loving the swiping on Tinder and all, you know what I mean? I think that it's the realness that makes it is where the romance is for me.
The romance stories as well, that very interesting one, like unique ones, like one of the Good Will Hunting. I would still count that as it's still romantic in a sense of the two characters that were trying to make it work, and then there's it's a romance story woven into but one of the things that the Robin Williams character brings up is that it's not about the good things about them, it's the idiosyncrasies and the things that you remember, it's the things that make them special. And it's like, I don't know, it's just little things like that always stick with you. I consider Fight Club, I think that's got a romance. I mean, literally the first line of it is everything has something to do with Marla Singer. His life is woven around this woman that he is obsessed with and yet despises at the same time. He's someone who he cannot physically live without. 1984 while it is a satire, also has romance woven into it. She has become a physical necessity. I think that, and that's the whole thing about, there's a whole thing about him healing and feeling more human because of love in this cold, unfeeling world. Romance is such a human emotion, and yet we've the fact that we're kind of almost neglecting it in this modern era is maybe is a worrying indictment of the future that we are entering. Brave New World is a fantastic example, not the TV show, don't watch that, read the book, where love is dead and sex is as common as shaking hands. It's an activity like tennis. You pair up, and it's something that you do after you play a round of tennis. It's love is dead, and it's kind of this perfectly...
It's a perfunctory bodily function.
Exactly. It's like this utopian world where Red Dwarf did a fantastic episode of Casablanca. No, it wasn't Casablanca. It was a Casablanca parody, I think. Where...
it's at the end where, for those, anybody, I am a huge fan of Red Dwarf, and I will put my hands up and say I love that show. Series 6 onwards, don't watch it. Series 7 onwards, don't watch it.
Yeah, 6 is incredible.
Yeah, where it's very similar, isn't it? Where he gets the role of
on the hollow ship.
On the hologram ship, and he sacrifices his career and his want, and just because he says, but you'll never see her again. He goes, but you will always be a partner. He goes, oh, sir, you're wrong. We won't be apart. We just won't be together.
And then he mimics throwing up afterwards, because like, did I just say that?
I can't believe I just said that.
Yeah. But it's very and then obviously they did another one with the woman who changes, or the thing that changes shape to whatever you love the most as well, where they do another parody of a classic romance story. But I think
there was that film Her a little while ago. I don't know if any of you saw that. It's quite interesting sort of take on romance and technology, isn't it?
Yeah, with Joaquin Phoenix, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who are in love with like fairground rides and stuff. I mean, where's that? I'm not taking the piss. Where is that in romance movies? I think it'd be harder for people to connect with.
I think that film would get made. It would probably be an independent and get very limited distribution. But I think that movie could get made.
There was a woman in France who married the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah,
that's like sort of a limerick.
There is an indie film. I haven't seen it yet. There is an indie film with Ryan Gosling in it called Lars and the Real Girl.
Yeah, I've
about a
seen
man who is it any good? Because I quite want to see it.
My recollection of it was that it was like that annoyingly cute, twee, indie, quirky sort of movie where everything was like, "Oh, isn't this quirky?" Do you know what? I don't even know if I made it to the end of it, but I didn't like it.
Yeah, well, it's about a man who falls in love with a blow-up sex doll, and he acts like she's his real girlfriend.
Yeah.
And his family, like he literally like brings her to family dinners and stuff.
People
like
kind of go along with it, don't they?
Yeah, but Benton's basically already covered. I was going to say, about love being the strongest of all human emotions. I think the fascination with it will never end because it's the best and worst emotion that we can feel. People do stupid things because of it. They do wonderful things because of it. People suffer because of it. People have their best memories because of it. And I did want to touch on a way that romance could be changing a little bit, which kind of ties into what we were saying about increased sexuality in films. Like I said, I'm very sexually open. I think everyone should be. We have seen an increase in recent years of films that are exploring an alternative, but almost like fetishism and things like that in films. And now they're not good films, but we can't ignore the fact that very popular were films like 50 Shades of Grey. And what's the one on Netflix, 365 Days, the one that's like a Polish 50 Shades of Grey? Oh,
50,
no.
50 Shades of Warsaw.
There's a Polish film, I'm sure it's called 365 Days. My Facebook timeline is filled with women being like, "Oh, I just wish real men were like this." And it is interesting because it's the antithesis of what I thought most women. There's a general feeling from women as a whole, which is always you're always dealing with problems when you generalize like this.
Yeah, let's sit tight for one of Jamie's sweeping generalizations.
No. I'm actually...
Oh no, hang on, stop. What we need to get, Benson, we need to get like a button, and it'd be like, and then you go right, go.
No. I do want to be quiet. I want to pick this one apart genuinely. Generally speaking, the message we've had for quite a long time is that women want more sensitive men. They don't want the man who goes down boozer all weekend, goes to work, he's not around much, doesn't help around the house, things like that. But the men represented in 50 Shades of Grey and this 365 Days, it's quite annoying because the producers sit there and go, "Oh, well, they're representatives of this BDSM lifestyle," but actually loads of BDSM practitioners have come out and said, no, this is just an abusive relationship. You are getting it completely wrong. Because as far as I'm aware, 365 Days is even worse. Like the bits I've seen of it are this guy literally just coming up to this woman, grabbing her by the neck, fucking ragging her around room, and that's meant to be sexy. So on the one hand, is it a good thing that things like BDSM and stuff, because I'm actually about to start a TV show on Netflix called Bonding that is all about stuff like that. Is it good that things like this are coming, it's new kinds of romance, or are Hollywood just fucking it up and ruining it?
Probably both. I mean, I think I've seen bits of 50 Shades and I can't speak for it, and I'm not massively knowledgeable on the BDSM thing, but I think it's a good thing that there are different types of story and different types of sexual relationships obviously being explored on there. But I think also you can't really trust mainstream Hollywood to probably do it in the most accurate and sensitive way.
Yeah.
The thing with 50 Shades of Grey was that it was it had two fairly famous actors in it, so that was going to set it. And second, it was the sort of Jackie Collins sort of style novel. I don't actually know Jackie. I don't want to call Jackie Collins novels. They're not novels. They're books, just books. Where it is that sort of when you're reading something, there's a part of you that wants them to go a little bit further, and that's what 50 Shades of Grey did. They went that extra mile to say, you've always wanted to see this, okay, we're going to show you it. But the problem with that was this: once you'd seen it once, you go, okay, what else is new? And that, again, goes back to the whole thing of desensitization.
Very poorly written as well, from what
it is. I've seen it, and it's dreadful.
But
It's a good laugh, but...
You know what, though? I wonder if it comes down to that thing of, like, it's because it's written by a female, isn't it? Obviously, predominantly a female audience, directed by a woman. And I know, I think even the women involved in it, particularly the director, I think they sort of felt it had its flaws. But I do think that a lot of our taste, I'm not talking about us, like, four here, but obviously part of that as all men. But I do think a lot of, like, the taste of what is good and what isn't good is largely being determined by men, and we favour sort of that masculine written style, so that when we see something that's not kind of written in that maybe Ernest Hemingway kind of style, I'm not saying every man writes the same, but I don't know. Do you know what I mean? There seems to be a little bit of like a sexist kind of thing of, oh, it's a book that women like.
Oh, no. By all means, I wish the book was well written.
But that's what I'm saying, though. Are we judging it as
every woman I know who's read it said it's badly written. It was written.
But even they've gone to like a school, and they've been to an education system and part of a culture that kind of says this is the way you write books, and it's the way that men have written books for hundreds and hundreds of years.
After this statement, we quickly went off topic, and I couldn't find a right way to get us back. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back.
I do want to raise a couple of. First of all, I do agree that we're living in this awful time where people think they can tell writers what to do. So I'm one of these people who views filmmaking and stuff as art. It's a form of art. You wouldn't go up to Michelangelo and tell him how to paint the fucking. Was it Michelangelo who did the Sistine Chapel?
Yeah.
Yeah, you won't go and tell him how to do that. Now, I just want to do a quick defense of Supernatural and Stephen Moffat. Rather embarrassing to admit, I was in the Supernatural fandom a few years ago. Anyway, Supernatural, the fan base is largely teenage girls. And I can tell you from being on those forums, every time they tried to introduce a female co-lead, the fandom girls would scream out for the girls to be killed off because they didn't want girls in the show. They wanted the attractive Winchester brothers killing monsters. So the fandom didn't want it. Moffat, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of bad things you can say about Moffat, but I really don't understand why they call Moffat sexist when you consider that he is the one who paved the way for this current super politically correct version of Doctor Who we've got. He turned the Master into a woman. He turned the Time Lord General into a woman. Under his era, companion-wise, Clara Oswald, who happens to be my favourite companion, a lot of people don't like her because they argue that he made her she's too powerful. Joe, traditionally, the companion is always sort of in a submissive position to the Doctor, which sounds like a horrible way of phrasing it. That's not really the right word. But Clara was incredibly intelligent. She could bullshit her way out of any situation, to the point where the fans literally they started calling it Clara Who. They were like, she's replacing the Doctor. She's replacing the Doctor. And they acknowledged that by literally reversing the title sequence one time so that her name came up first and everything. As a little reference. So I do feel like I've got to defend Stephen there for a minute, because actually, for better or worse, whatever your opinion on current Doctor Who is, he is the one who paved the way for all of that. I think the female characters were much worse written under Russell T Davies because they're all damsels constantly. But anyway,
it's just a thing about fandoms, and just I think once again that a lot of fandoms are looking at romance or they look for romance between certain characters. So the fact that they can now shape stories by simply being the masses, and the Arrow by CW, which had a kind of a romance thread through it, the fans basically steered the romance story towards an entirely different character than what Arrow is usually typically from the source material, simply because the I guess that the demographic lined up better, and they connected better with that character, and essentially just strong-armed the story into an entirely different direction, which I think is why romance stories have changed in a sense.
Yeah, well, Ben might have heard this as well. I don't know because I know he's a big MCU fan as well. For a little while there was a large portion of the MCU fan base who were trying to pressure them to make Captain America and the Winter Soldier into a gay couple. They wanted to do away with the whole Agent Carter thing. That just because those two characters are best friends who obviously do actually have some kind of love for each other. I mean, you don't turn on the Avengers and fight them to save someone you don't love.
Yeah, but this is the strange thing that goes through fandoms, that bromance, as it were, and it's a word that sends a shiver up the old spine, that bromance has almost become synonymous with
homosexuality.
Eros. Like Scrubs, the thing between Turk and JD is borderline. Like they do make some jokes about how they could easily be a gay couple, but it's supposed to be a celebration of two best friends who met, and they don't have some, it's just.
But we're forgetting probably the most iconic. Well, actually, one of the most. It's probably two iconic. I say homosexual rather than the phrase gay, because that obviously that not in every circle, but in most circles it means men. So I'll use the term homosexual. The two most probably famous romance films of homosexual couples, Thelma and Louise, Brokeback Mountain, and to be honest, I can't think of another. I mean, I'm only thinking off the top of my head here. I can't think of another homosexual couple film that's based solely on those two.
Isn't there? Is it Call Me by Your Name? Is that what it's called?
But again, it's that those are the probably you just said. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I'm not saying
yeah.
But I think we're all I think we're all in agreement that obviously none of us have a problem with it. Obviously not. But I personally think, going back to what you were saying, Benson, that the whole like boy meets girl, that sort of thing. If a film came out that was different, that wasn't the boy meets girl thing, if there was actually a conflict between these two people getting together, whether it be a man and a woman, or a woman and a woman, or a man and a man, for me personally, it's not something that we've really been shown in cinema since Brokeback Mountain. Really, not centralized.
I think there has been films that have sort of varying degrees of success. I mean, there was that Love, Simon that came out a few years ago, which was kind of aimed at quite a mainstream audience. I think it probably did okay. I think there definitely is.
Well, I've heard rumours that Captain Marvel. This is only a rumor. I don't know how true this is. That Captain Marvel is gay, and that they want her to be the first homosexual character. Which a lot of people said, okay, we've got no problem with that. We go, it doesn't really bother us because one, it shouldn't, and second, they've gone, well, if she's gay, what does it matter? It's just the character we watch, not
from comics. I think she's been both at some points in the comics, because I know in the comics at one point she was in a relationship with Thor.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many fucking comics and iterations that they can literally take it in any direction they want, and do you know what I mean? So why not?
My only problem, like Ben said earlier, I do think we need increased representation. I think that studios should be trying to do that. What I don't like is when studios try and use it to win brownie points. So I like the MCU, but one very bad thing they did was in the lead up to Endgame, they kept doing press releases about how they were introducing the Marvel Universe's first openly gay character. And I think that's when the Captain Marvel rumors started. And it turns out it's that one character in a 5-minute scene right at the beginning in the therapy session. And it's just nothing. It's nothing. Like, you did not need to come out and be like making press releases in Variety magazine. Look how progressive we are, for a character you're actually giving 5 minutes of screen time to, and then going right back to all the straight white men. And that's the part of it that I don't like, is when they're because these are real people's lives, and these people, fair enough, they want to see themselves represented on screen. Of course they do. And it does annoy me when studios use that to gain brownie points instead of just doing better.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. I think, unfortunately, the bottom line with the studios is to make money, and if increasing, LGBTQI plus representation in their films helps them to line their pockets more, then they'll do it. If they feel like it's going to harm them, they won't. But I think at least they're doing it, and that ultimately you've got to kind of take the positive from that. And it's only a matter of time, isn't it, before you get a major franchise which does have an LGBTQIA plus character in the lead role. It's just who's going to do it first. And
hopefully we are with Candy Heartbush.
Wait, is Candy Heart LGBT?
Yeah, Candy. We don't reveal it until the second one, but she's actually bisexual.
Okay.
So poor, no, she genuinely is. Poor Kyle loses out again. Falls in love with a woman.
Ryan's gonna love that.
Oh, Ryan does. Ryan has some choice words to say about it.
God,
so, just quickly going back to old quintessential romance, as it were, has our opinion shifted on what we believe is as for today's standard, what is the quintessential romance film? I'll start with you, Jamie.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd just like to say to everyone, I would like to say thank you, because I think we've had a really interesting and intelligent discussion on this today. We have explored around the topic quite a bit. But no, I don't mean in terms of going off topic, though. I think it's all been very relevant, maybe not to that initial question, but I love the fact we've explored, are romance films even viable today? Would they be successful if you were to make them now? Things like that. And we've even talked about like the way they might change in the future. I hope that's something we do on this podcast that other podcasts don't do, because they tend to focus on the more surface level, all the effects are better in this film than in that film sort of thing.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think it's a genre that's incredibly hard to pick. Like I used Halloween as an example at the beginning. That's a real easy one. It's really easy to pick the definitive slasher film because it's almost a universally agreed upon thing.
Yeah.
It's same with Disney. It's Snow White. Snow White is the quintessential Disney film. It's adapting an old fairy tale with some songs, kid-friendly animation, etc. I'm going to stick with Dirty Dancing purely because, although I'm prepared to admit that there can be other films that are better than Dirty Dancing, there's other films that have probably done it just as well as Dirty Dancing. No one else has made a convincing argument to me that replaces Dirty Dancing. Like the impact on that film, like I said, you can go up to most people and say nobody puts baby in a corner, boom, they know Dirty Dancing. That film had an impact that has stayed with us even today. I do think that I think Casablanca is a great shout. I think Love Actually is a great shout, but I just don't think Love Actually had the impact on the genre that Ben felt it did. But yeah, so I'm going to stick with Dirty Dancing. Thank you.
Dave?
I don't know if I actually ever said what I thought was a quintessential romance.
No, I don't think you did.
Yeah, I don't think you
I think what you said, and I was like, huh.
Yeah. Well, I would go for something which has that sort of, as I say, that bittersweet acknowledgement of it won't be perfect, but it will be pretty damn close. So I'll go for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I think is the one that gets it for me.
Okay. Ben?
I think, to be honest, I think your sort of stance on it, Benson, sort of swayed my opinion a little bit, which is that you look for it when it's not so obvious. It's not the forefront of the film. So it has swayed me a little bit, I suppose. I think, I will stick with Love Actually, but I will take that opinion and your opinion and think, actually, to be fair, Love Actually for me is still the quintessential romance film. But is it the best? Maybe not, but it depends on what you look for in a film. As I've said through this, it depends on what you define as a romantic film. You can put that down to families, you can put that down to friends, you can put that down to lovers, you can put that down to to anything, even with a pet, for Christ's sake, you know. So again, it depends on what your opinion is. But yeah, I'll stick with it. But my opinion has been swayed slightly.
Happy days! Look at that.
Ben said, how about you? Where are you sitting on
well,
this?
a point that Ben made that I hadn't actually thought of, the thing about how love sometimes comes when you least expect it, as sappy as it is, that sometimes, you know, you go out looking for it and you never find it, and then suddenly it's one of those tale of oldest time. It happens to be under your nose the entire time, those old stories. This is completely off topic, but yeah, I'm saying Casablanca simply because there's a reason it has gained its legendary reputation. It is a thriller with romance woven into it and personality dripping out of every pore. There's a reason that the lines are so well remembered, just because it's a banging film. It's a great film, honestly. And if you haven't seen it, get it for £2 on Amazon Prime, rent it, watch it. Yeah.
Which is what you'll be doing with Greece after we get off this podcast.
I will say, Greece. You have to see it, but Greece is a good musical. It's not a good movie. If you took all of the songs out of Greece, there's no substance to it.
Oh, I don't like musicals though.
Yeah, but I don't kind of hold truck with those sorts of things. It's like saying if you took all the shooting out of Saving Private Ryan. Do you know what I mean?
I think that'd be quite interesting.
Woven into it. Grease is a great musical because it has got great songs.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I have to say, I've heard that the stage show is amazing, especially the one that came to the Paris in Southend a couple of years ago. I heard it was amazing.
Cool. I think that's the end of
Do you
it.
want to do your promotions?
Yeah, I will do.
Your ablutions.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to the podcast. This podcast is part of the Impala Films Network. You can find us over on YouTube at Impala Films. You can like, share, rate, subscribe to our podcast.
We're Impala Revolution on Facebook.
Yes, it is. That was a marketing gimmick that I will talk to you about another point, because I don't think we can change it, so I think we're stuck with it now.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, on Facebook we are at Impala Revolution. On YouTube we're Impala Films. You can find me on Twitter at Jamie by Design, where I post all my updates on my writing and things like that. And as I say, please do share the podcast with any film fan friends you might have. We're trying to get the name out there. Want to, make it all the way to the top of the British charts, up there with Shagged, Married, Annoyed, and which is a great podcast, by the way. Highly recommend it. And My Dad Wrote a Porno. We want to be up there with them. Big time, baby.
Ooh, aim for the stars. Right. With that, then, I think we will say good night.
Good night.